6.8, and they took
No,
the
it's
stimulus
actually,
out and went to 6.
actually, the Chapter
just
70
cut.
money was 6.047 million last year, and then
Yeah.
there was a 795 arrow. So they took that 6,045,000, they cut 10%, and then they're
Right.
saying you have 5,400,000 for next year.
Right.
And what we're saying is, but it's not going to go from 6.8 million, which the governor's proposed, down to 5.4 million. It just, I don't see how that's possible.
It's not an election year either.
So I think, you know, we're probably going to have somewhere between if we budget with that 6.8 million number in mind, we're probably going to still end up with a $300,000 or $400,000 deficit that we're going to have to work with
Right.
and figure out what to do. But that's a heck of a lot more better than a $1.8 million deficit, which we would have with a $5.4 million
Right.
number.
On Thursday, the North Shore Coalition is going to the State House and do some talking. We'll see what we can see from that. Try to bring back something for the next meeting.
But I guess I would like to schedule a meeting with the Finance
I think we
Committee, and
need to.
also maybe get Brad and Bruce Tarr in to meet with us again and try to explain to us what's going on with these Chapter 70 numbers and how are we expected to you know, analyze and understand these numbers that the governor's put out there.
I've been doing the analysis, if you will, collection and analysis of data from the communities that are part of the North Shore Coalition. And one of the interesting things is we've been looking at unfunded mandates and totaling up what the cost of unfunded mandates. And if you look at the Chapter 70 money and compare it with the unfunded mandates, Chapter 70 covers about 50% of the unfunded mandates. It's pretty short.
Yeah.
And the state needs to move ahead and provide more consistent funding for education. The other thing that's interesting is that we have the worst population to student ratio of any of the other communities that I've looked at.
You know, we've said that's a fact, Cliff.
Yes.
If that's a fact, it explains a whole lot.
Right, which is why
that is really a.
Which is why we're
just to give you an idea. This is just where that plays out, and it sounds, you know, like, oh, you're just finding some other reason to get a little extra money. But there are we're at about 5 people per student, and if you take the next community in this group of it's about 12, 11, 12 that I've got in the table, the next community is over 6 people. When you say, well, that's not very much, 5 to 6. 20%.
Right.
What if we had 20% fewer students?
We'd be able to afford. We'd be able to afford a nice
That would
system.
be 20% less money that
Right.
we're spending.
That solves all the mystery.
Which is
per
$4
pupil
million.
expenditure and
Yeah,
it's
everything else.
$4 million.
It's very simple. It's very basic.
And
that's
the town
$4
simply
million
can't
right
afford.
there.
The town cannot afford to fund what we need, and that's where the state needs to
Fix the formula.
spend more
But it
money
isn't a
and fix
part
the
of the
formula.
distribution formula.
Right. All other things are.
And for us, it's a double whammy, because not only do you have that ratio, but on top of that, the residents have to bear the
Right,
brunt of
'cause there's no
of
bid-
the tax
no
impact, because
industry.
there's no commercial industrial
Right,
base.
Right.
right.
So not only do we have that ratio, now the residential tax base
Right.
is so high because there's no help from.
And there are communities within this same group that are up in the order of 7.5 to 8
That's,
Yep.
versus 5.
So we made, you know, in the 6 years I've been on the board, we've actually made progress from being like the 5th or 6th lowest spending community in the state per pupil to we're in like the 20s now. But that still puts us in the bottom 10% of the
Out
state.
of 350.
Out of 300, right,
And if
right.
they take anything out of our foundation,
Right.
we'll go back down.
We'll go back down.
Right.
And it's funny, one of the ways we moved up was because, remember there wasn't accounting being done properly for some of the health insurance funds that were being spent, and then those were moved into the school budget, and that moved us up to
Yeah.
higher on the
Wasn't-
scale, but it didn't have anything to do with educating
Right.
students.
Right.
But still, we've remained in that bottom 10% since I've been on the school board.
The difference between us and the lowest guy is not very much.
No. No.
Yeah. And just one other thing, when we were talking about transparency and budgeting, we think that the town should take a look at your April warrant and the appropriations and then realize that throughout the year, those numbers are adjusted. So you have to look at your October warrant and see that some departments come back to the
Right, for more
town
money.
for supplemental funding.
Right.
Maybe they've finished their bargaining and they need to supplement their salary line item. Or maybe they're then picking up equipment. So that if you just look at the April warrant, it's not a real picture of what the department's spending. And in addition, the Finance Committee has jurisdiction over a $100,000 reserve fund. And throughout the year, departments that, run out of funds in line items will go to the Finance Committee for a transfer. Those funds aren't reported back. So when we sit down and we budget, we really need an actual number, not what was appropriated the prior April, but what was added to that number throughout the year.
Well, and I would add, though, I do think, for us, for the school department, we do have the advantage of it being a bottom line budget.
Right.
And we can move money around as needed.
Right.
And the town departments don't have that freedom. They don't have that ability to. So if they run out of money in a line item,
They need to.
they need to transfer
Right.
it because they don't have that bottom line
Right.
budget as we have.
If-
And I think overall, my observation is that as a town, we're a pretty frugal
Yes.
operation,
Mhm.
and that we run a good, I complain about the snow plows.
And then it stops snowing. It was
But-
perfect, Cliff.
But the fact is that, we do a good job of plowing the snow, and it's within the range of what it ought to cost us
Yep.
as a town. The problem is that we just don't have enough people per student.
Right.
And we've had a good school system, and we've brought a lot of families into the town because of the schools. And that's something we should be commended for.
Right.
But it doesn't pay the bills.
People, they don't get the accurate picture either. There was a time when we weren't such a tough economy where departments, even the school departments, would put a salary supplement line in anticipation of bargaining. And in order to come in balanced in April, we've gotten away from doing that. And so we find ourselves back in October supplementing because, of course, you're going to bargain your contracts and there's going to be a cost. So, any comments that were made about transparency, like Mel said, wasn't targeted at
Right.
people,
Right.
but rather the picture that's starting to escape us because we're trying to fit into the revenue numbers in April. And certainly moving to June will help because we'll have a better idea of revenue numbers, but we really need as a community to get a handle on what it really costs and use those as a springboard. So Mel and I have continued, and Carl as well, to stand firm on a level services budget.
Thank you.
And, we'll see. Okay. We'll move along. We finished the warrant article for the feasibility study. We have a proposal for a chairlift at the middle school. Do you want to speak to that,
Well,
Carl?
if we could also, there's a large cap.
Oh, I'm
about
sorry,
that
you're right,
In your
yes.
packet, that
Yes.
I'd like to speak to quickly.
Sure.
I might also say, Mr. Webster was referring to per pupil spending. The FY09 per pupil spending figures were published this afternoon.
I was just going to ask you that question.
Yeah, I don't have a ranking.
You don't know where we are?
No.
I'll have that by about midnight tonight if you want to
Okay,
call me.
okay. But if you could address pull out your information on the large capital. Now, as a background to this, you may recall that the school committee has taken a position, and the numbers 1 through 7, you took a position on, I believe, in November, and voted in the affirmative to include numbers 1 through 7 on the April town meeting warrant. So we would like to discuss those in anticipation of the superintendent providing the final warrant request to the town administrator at this time for inclusion in the April town meeting warrant. And what's challenging about large capital, of course, is that we're trying to run that fine line between are we going to continue to spend money on items that we need for the middle and high school, or are we going to hopefully have a building project? So that's the challenge we face as we put this list together for your
Carl,
review every year.
I look at this, and one, we're not gonna be asking for the money for construction on April, so we take those two off. And then the rest, middle, the only one.
Technology.
The technology, but also the little school tile replacement, because number 4 is middle and little.
Yeah.
I don't know, the only thing I don't know is what the cost would be for the little school for the tile replacement. But those are the only two that I think we should ask, is the little school tile replacement and this technology, until we get closure on what's gonna happen with the building project. I don't know if anybody else.
I think we do need to continue documenting the middle and high school as part of the plan for the project. But there are other ones on here that I think we need to keep our buildings in good repair, so we're not looking. And there's one, the little school roof repair. Roof repairs really concern me. Number 11.
Yeah, that's moved up to fiscal year 12.
We put that up to FY12.
Yeah, but it should stay on the plan, right? Are we talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
submitting the
Oh, no,
plan
this
or
is
just
the
the
plan.
request?
We're just
Just the
talking this year.
request?
Yeah.
Just fiscal.
So the plan submitted though, the timeline and the?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
90
I
million,
take that back.
935 might be a little high. You're asking for.
Yeah.
So those 7, we had already taken a preliminary vote on, 1 through 7, to submit. But I'm saying right now, I would submit the little school portion of 4, however much that's gonna cost, unless the asbestos is a problem at the middle school.
No, I want to be very clear about why this is included. There are no asbestos problems in North Reading Public Schools.
Okay.
We subscribe extremely carefully to AHERA regulations, which are an acronym for asbestos inspections. We have, by law, just very quickly, so because asbestos is a word that sometimes concerns people, by law,
Sure.
School districts across the country are required to do an intense inspection every 3 years and a visual inspection every 6 months. And we're very careful about staying current with that. And to make that those inspections legitimate, we actually hire outside contractors to do the reviews for us. By law, you're allowed to do those inspections yourself if you have the proper training. But at my behest, really, we hire external companies, which tend to, frankly, be, a new set of eyes, and they're not going to sweep anything under the table, if you will. So we have, and every time there are findings, we report them to the school committee. There have been none for years and years and years. We've had 2 asbestos remediation projects in the last 10 years. One was at the little school this summer. And that wasn't even based on a problem. It was based, I would call it more of a preventive work. We replaced the ceiling panels in the whole wing, which were asbestos. But the problem we have with asbestos is when it becomes friable, meaning when things start chipping or powdering or exposed pipes. We have an inventory of every bit of asbestos in our district, and I'm confident in saying that we would meet all inspections. So the purpose of this on here, Mel, is, again, it's preventive. There are no problems.
Could we push them both out to 12, is
Yes,
what I was gonna ask you?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Because that's what I'd prefer to do, and then just put the technology on.
With the technology.
And I think, Carl, we've already talked to finance and selectmen at the Finance Planning Committee about the need for.
And it has to be April, because sometimes they're trying to push it off, but the bill is due in August, so
So it has to be April.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So do we need a motion, or we wait till Jerry comes back?
Yeah.
We'll just make a motion to, okay.
I think it'll pass. Are you in favor? Why don't you go ahead?
I'll make a motion to submit the one large capital item, which is the technology, to continue to pay the 3-year lease purchase plan that we have for $60,882.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Jerry objects, he can have a chance. Jerry, we just made a motion and a second for the technology. but that's what we thought.